lot of people shopping today. I guess everyone's preparing for a New Year's celebration now, huh? And what did I read today? How about this one? I guess with the New Year's coming, people are still fearing drones in general, and some people are demanding more to be done. This one says, major changes for drone rules do not fully negate privacy concerns, expert says. So what's going on here, huh? It says, sweeping rule changes for the flying of drones are welcome, but do not go far enough, according to the chairman of the Irish Professional Drone Pilots Association. From January 1st, requirements what govern the use of drones for most hobbyists in the EU will change when the current temporary weight class system expires. IPDPA chairman Fergal McCarthy said, quote, most of the changes will impact hobbyists more than commercial operators, but are certainly things that may grant the public a bit more peace of mind. So what would people think about this, quote, professional drone organization wanting in general more restrictions against a drone flyer? And in this case, they kind of say themselves it affects hobbyists more than anything else. It says many commercially available drones sold prior to January 1st will already have C-class markers or stickers, meaning they are fully compliant with the new regime. However, other popular drones by major manufacturers may not have the compliance stickers and could be subject to flying restrictions. Old legacy drones put on the market before January 1st without a classification mark, or drones that are privately manufactured, may still be flown in the new year but will be subjected to some limitations depending on their weight. Drones without classification marks, which are lighter than 250 grams, may not fly over crowds of people, while drones between this weight and 25 kilograms may only fly far from people unless a further special certification is acquired. That's one of the things too, where it doesn't really matter what you're flying per se or how you're doing it. There's so much restrictions, certifications for this and that, it just gets really ridiculous. Now with this subject, there's the talk about whether or not everyone should have to use things like remote ID, people being able to, let's just say, walk out with their smartphone to see, hey, who owns this drone and so forth. Sounds kind of okay on paper if you're that paranoid, but what about kids flying toys, for example? How ridiculous would that be, where anybody could track whoever down and all that? And this guy sounds like he's in favor of it overall in terms of more, again, remote ID restrictions and all that. It says, Mr. McCarthy said, I'm in favor of direct remote ID so as long it is for everybody. I see this as helping the public acceptance of drones. I mean, with that logic, I even mentioned it before, you having a personal fear, paranoia, prejudice, and so forth against specific, let's just say, things or people in general does not justify something needing to be tracked per se. It says if a member of the public thinks a drone is invading their privacy, they can get an app and detect that and report it. So let's switch the situation. Let's pretend it's me being concerned about this individual. I'm afraid you're someone in a hate group, for example. I just looked at some mugshots over the past couple of days of police reports. Hey, you fit that description maybe. Should I have the right, for example, to know exactly who you are, where you're going at all times with my smartphone, for example? Maybe we should chip ID you, for example. Like, what is the limitations there in terms of what's overboard and all that? I mean, like there, what would you say? Oh, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't have to keep track of everything that I do personally when it doesn't bother you. Then why would you think that should be the case here? In my opinion, this just comes down to too much fear, too much, for example, propaganda per se because of conflict of interest, it seems like, where a lot of people want these rules to benefit themselves commercially or their little organizations, for example, for whatever reason. And it just goes on where this guy's talking point is all of the fear-mongering stuff that you've heard of over the years, for example. Saying here with small drones, he said the most popular drones for the majority of hobbyists are so lightweight and they will be exempt from the new remote ID rules and could end up being used to breach people's privacy. The cameras on these small drones are so good now, and actually you're more likely to invade someone's privacy with a smaller drone because they're quieter. They can be there and they do not know. You're now basically saying they don't have to broadcast their location, so people are obviously going to be going towards those drones more and more. So the risk of them falling and hurting someone is negated by it being lighter, but it can still invade people's privacy the same as a bigger drone. He believes remote ID should be a requirement for all drones, saying here, for example, there's still this bigger problem of invasion of privacy, and that's where there is still a concern. It doesn't address people loitering, hovering over gardens. This is insane in my opinion. Again, I would ask, in life in general, it usually comes down to consistency. Would you agree? Where I can now reverse the situation saying, hey, a person like you with a smartphone, how do I know you're not gonna use it to spy on people? Look at the technology in smartphone nowadays. The phone cameras are so great with all these telephoto zoom capabilities and all that. How do I know you're not some creep, for example? We should track you afterwards. Or hey, you drive a car. How do I know you're not a terrorist? I mean, how ridiculous is this, in my opinion? But either way, this is gonna carry on, I guess, throughout the years, and this is kind of my example too. So many of these organizations per se, all they care about is themselves from the sounds of it anyways. I mean, you gotta think of everyone in general, not just you and whatever it is that you're personally trying to push, whatever it is, courses, some kind of income source in terms of certifying people. It just seems like there's too much conflict of interest in my opinion, and this isn't about safety. It reminds me of that thought again too. Why do people let, I guess, organizations like that get away with it, with those types of quote narrative and all that? Some people, they hide it really well. They say they're on your side and all that to protect this and that, but in reality, it just seems like a lot of these places, they're just for themselves, again, to profit from it financially in whatever way possible. Because this stuff overall, people with over-the-top regulations, these remote IDs for everything, it does not make sense when you factor in everything, and that's not how we handle most things in life either. And with that thought of other types of drones, in my opinion, it's weaponized ones that you should worry about. This one here says, South Korean troops practice response to terror, drone attacks on Seoul streets. Imagine people running out with stuff like this, I guess, in the future in a common everyday scenario, huh? Are you gonna be going after kids with drones, or basically, again, ones that are actually militarized and all that? It says, Seoul's metropolitan government held an urban field exercise this week with the country's military to prepare for threats against the roughly 10 million residents from North Korean attacks, the South Korean army said. The one-day integrated defense operation in the capital city Wednesday focused on a wide range of simulated threats, including an aerial drone attack on a water purification plant, a North Korean Special Operations Forces assault, and a chlorine gas leak, according to a news release from South Korea's army. The exercise was held to defend Seoul from terrorist threats from North Korea. Further efforts will be made to strengthen our integrated defense posture to protect the lives of the people, South Korean Army Colonel Choi Won-suk said in the release. The South Korean Army did not disclose how many soldiers and Seoul municipal employees took part in the exercise. Photos released by the Army show soldiers operating in streets and drilling rigs preparing to simulate a rescue of people trapped underground. Either way, again, it comes down to what you're using and how. Because some people even brought it up before too. Anything can be used as a weapon as well, but at what point does it become ridiculous, for example? And on a random note, I read this, which was actually spreading a lot here. It was a local news where apparently somebody robbed an entire rack of coats and they went to the Skytrain. And you would think at first, if you're a regular bystander, you would just assume, okay, it's just someone transporting it, huh? But apparently the person was shoplifting, and it says here, alleged thief arrested with 34 winter coats on Skytrain in Vancouver. Police say a 35-year-old man has been arrested after being found riding the Skytrain in Vancouver on Christmas Day with a rack of 34 allegedly stolen winter coats. A video posted on social media shows Metro Vancouver Transit Police removing the rolling rack of coats from a carriage and escorting a man off the train at Waterfront Station. Again, you would assume at first it's just somebody transporting the stuff, but I guess it looks suspicious, and then ultimately they were caught in all that. But how would you react if you saw this? Would your first reaction actually would be to phone the police as an example? All right, see you guys later.